Hello, everyone. I know on the last episode I also cut in at the beginning of the episode, but I have to cut it on this one as well because you may notice that this episode is coming out on a Thursday, and normally our episodes come out on Mondays. That is because of the situation that has just occurred yesterday when we recorded. This episode is primarily going to be talking about that. And so essentially the entire episode is kind of like a little one-off, not our usual, scheduled programming. However, I want to point out that the format of the show is still exactly how it is. It's just coming out on a Thursday rather than a Monday, and we felt that it needed to come out today due to the seriousness of the situation and the macabre nature of what has happened. We are all deeply saddened, of course, by it, and so basically this episode is just talking about that one specific thing. Our normal programming will resume next week, hopefully. So thank you everyone for sticking with us, and yeah, I guess enjoy, As the World Turns or Burns a little earlier than usual. Thanks.
With the Falcons, and of course they much like my Michigan experience, Falcons get to the Super Bowl and they
yeah.
What do? They'll break your heart.
Lay an egg. I mean, the Vikings, they've lost a lot of NFC championship games. They lost to the Falcons. They lost to the Giants. They got blown out by the Giants in
40-3.
2000. And they lost
40-0 actually.
Lost to the Eagles a few years ago. They lost to the Saints. They had Brett Favre that one year.
Yep, Bounty Gate.
There's another one I'm missing too, but they've lost a lot of NFC championship games.
You got a photographic memory on this. Yeah.
Well, the 2017 and the 09 one, I actually lived, right?
Yeah.
And the 09 one was the first time I ever saw my dad cry in my life. So.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, because Brett Favre, he's like rolling out to the right? It's 28-28, and they're in field goal range. Like realistically, 50 yards, even in 09's field goal range. And he rolls out and he throws this just the worst pick, the most Brett Favre throw ever. And my dad literally gets onto his knees and is like banging his head on our carpet. And like he gets up and his eyes are just tearing. He's like, "We're gonna lose." And then they did.
Favre could have run for like 3 or 4 yards. Yeah. He had some space. He wasn't very mobile at that point in his career, but he could have moved a little bit at least.
Yeah, but it was like he was, the guy who was doing the broadcast, what's his name, Paul Allen.
Yeah.
He did the Vikings broadcast on the radio, and he was just,
losing
grilling him.
I believe his exact words, "This is not Detroit, man."
Yeah, this is not Detroit, yeah, so.
Love it. All right, well, we about ready?
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Oh, you didn't turn it on again. Jason, well, a little soft intro, I guess. That's producer Jason now, without ever telling us, just turns the cameras on. And
it's good stuff.
So we're off just talking football and what have you. But
that's what the people want.
It's what the people, you got to give the people what they want. So with that, yes, hello. Welcome to As the World Turns or Burns, our bi-weekly podcast looking at everything that's going on in the world. Joining me, Pat Lynch, is
Kieran O'Keefe,
Brendan Connell,
and producer Jason.
Yes, they're quietly pushing buttons without us knowing. A few things we wanted to talk about, but all of that got put aside for what just recently happened is political assassination, I guess. You Charlie Kirk, speaker. He's 20 minutes into a speech at Utah Valley, not exactly a political hotbed, and I don't know anything about the shooter, but he gets shot and he's dead. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's going to be a lot of polarization around this issue, as with every other issue in the coming days. I think there will be people who will say things like, "Oh, well, I didn't agree with his political views, but he shouldn't have been assassinated." And I think when someone is assassinated, you should probably just drop, "I didn't agree with his political views," and just it's bad somebody got assassinated. Yeah. So what I foresee happening is that people on the left are going to say this is an example of why we need more gun control.
Right.
And then people on the right are going to say this is an example of left-wing terrorism, left-wing violence. I think those are going to be the big camps people are going to circle into. I didn't look in depth, but just even 45 minutes ago, looking at my phone a little bit on social media, I'm starting to see those groups kind of converge.
Yeah.
This is going to be the argument that I think both camps are going to make. And Kirk was an outspoken proponent of the Second Amendment. I never heard of this until today, but I guess he had some interview a few years ago. He said something to the effect that, if some people have to die for the Second Amendment, that's just the way things are going to be. He was in support of that. And so that's going to come out against him, as it already is, but will more in the next few days too. So very unfortunate. When political violence gets going, it's oftentimes very hard to stop. It's much easier to begin than to stop. Violence in general is hard to stop because it turns into cycles of retaliation where one side thinks the other side is, wronged them in some form, so they can retaliate and do something even worse. And then again, the other side feels like they have to retaliate. If you look at like the 1960s, what I've thought about before is, as bad as things are now, we haven't had really the string of assassinations that took place in the 60s, where you had MLK, JFK, RFK, among others.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, another one. And I hope that doesn't happen, but when you're in a very polarized environment and people feel like the whole future of the country, whether or not it will survive, is at stake, it leads to very extreme actions, including political assassinations. So we'll find out who the shooter is. We don't want to assume anything for sure, don't know anything for sure, but obviously, the speculation is going to be it's somebody on the political left who was not a fan of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, like Kieran said, the next 48 hours, the news cycle is going to be basically both sides, the left and the right, spinning this in some way, or at least trying to push some narrative. So to the right, Charlie Kirk will be this martyr, and it's kind of the mentally deranged left that's going to be kind of now demonized. The left is going to talk about sort of, this is why we need gun restrictions, and ultimately, it's sad because nothing is really going to change, I don't think, at least not for the better. I've now come to learn that whenever you have a big, if we want to call it a crisis or some unfortunate moment like this, you would hope it would bring the country together, but it's just going to break things apart further, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that I kind of build on what you're saying, that, if this was like a movie, this would be that moment that we just got to bring the temperature down. But, there's been other times this exact same thing has happened, and all it does is just get things even more heated. Mm-hmm. And I just, sadly, I think that's going to be the case, that it'll be more heated. And if you think about from the right, they're going to be drawing a clear line between Trump's two failed assassination attempts to what happened today, and that there's this attack, from the left on the changes that we're trying to make. And that's just going to continue to feed and build that narrative that, it's us against them. They'll do anything to stop us, and because everybody loves to be seen as the martyr, and I just really do sadly think it's going to just heat up, and you're going to find the rhetoric, and especially, and it all starts with Trump, and I give him 24 hours, and then he'll kind of amp it up again in some form or fashion.
I'll also add too. So there was a shooting at a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado, when I was there. Not at the grocery store, but I was living in Boulder at the time because I was going to grad school at CU. And I remember when that happened, like, it was so close to home. I mean, we had students that were affected by it, and they closed down campus. And I remember there was like this feeling of, well, it's going to bring people together, and perhaps things will get less polarized in some fashion. And that's not how it worked. And I remember at the time I was thinking, like, no, this isn't going to change anything, because like, how many times has this happened? There's Sandy Hook, and before that, and there's been shootings this year as well. Like, I'm honestly have lost track now of like all of these things that are happening with people getting shot. It's so depressing. But what's even more depressing is like, nothing's actually changing. It's just people digging in and arguing back and forth.
Thoughts and prayers. That's the solution. yeah, there's not. I try everything possible not to be a cynic, but yeah, any kind of meaningful restriction or gun regulation, it's impossible. There's no incentive to for the people that want to play up, the gun rights and that. There's no incentive to make any change. They always have a convenient out that chances are whoever this individual was that shot and killed Charlie Kirk has some mental issues that don't know a thing, but I'm guessing that would be. Yeah, I mean, the young man who tried to assassinate Trump in Pennsylvania, that was clearly the case, and the guy who shot the poor children at the going to mass on the first day of school. I think he and the list just goes on and on of where they have just mental issues, and so there's your answer. You need it's not guns that are killing people; it's crazy people that are killing people.
In terms of like unifying, 9/11 was obviously way more than one assassination, but that anniversary is tomorrow, 24th anniversary, and there was like a unification of the U.S. after 9/11. And I can't help but wonder if we had 9/11 in 2025, what would the reaction be? There maybe be some kind of unity, but I wouldn't be surprised if it just fell into what everything falls into now, which is like sort of tribal camps and infighting. When it comes to gun control, I do think that there's a very good argument in favor of more gun restrictions outside of what happened today. There are very few issues where I think the evidence is so overwhelming as when it comes to guns. It's just, if you look at all the developed countries in the world, and you want to like correlate, there's a strong correlation between the number of guns in circulation and the number of deaths. And even within the US, there's a strong correlation between the number of guns in individual states and the number of deaths from guns in those states. So the US, I think, has something like, you could fact check me on this, but I want to say it's somewhere in the ballpark of like 120 guns per 100 people, which is like by far number one in the world. There's no other country in the world that's like even close to the US. And I just think, if you make guns so widely accessible, they can get in the hands of people who shouldn't have them.
Right.
And it's not that complicated. I really don't think it is. If you make guns that anybody can get them, some bad people are going to get them. I don't think some additional gun restrictions would be in violation of the Second Amendment. I think there are reasonable restrictions you could put in place. We're not an outlier in mental health. Every country has people with mental health. But compare us to other countries of similar nature, whether it be Canada or Australia. The difference is not mental health, at least not to any substantial degree. The big difference is that the U.S., you can go down to the store and get a gun immediately, including ones that are really powerful. And you can't do that in other countries. And even, sometimes people will say things, well, Chicago and New York, they have crime. Well, Chicago does have a lot of crime, but also a lot of Chicago's guns come from Indiana. Right. Indiana does not have strict.
Where we're somewhere outside of, they pass a law and then it can come in from anywhere. So that.
Yeah, in New York, the study's a number of years ago now, but I think it was like 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. The number one source of guns and crimes in New York was Virginia.
Yeah.
Number two was like South Carolina, then it was North. New York was way down on the list. It's because there's interstate trade of guns, and you circulate guns from states where there are like no regulations to states where there are regulations, and that's where they're coming from. So it's an issue I find very frustrating because I don't think there's like any evidence really backing up that like more guns somehow reduce gun violence or make you safer, which is sometimes the argument you'll hear.
Right.
But it's also an entirely impossible to solve political situation at the moment, just based on the makeup of Congress and political sentiments.
The Supreme Court, didn't they overturn like a New York statute that they had very strict, like as far as gun ownership rules, and they kind of took that away, and
they did. It's a very old law too. It went back like 100 years or something. I forget what exactly it said, but you're right. That was around the time they overturned Roe v. Wade, but it was a few years ago. And a number of years earlier, there was a pretty strict ban on guns in D.C., and the Supreme Court also overturned that. That was maybe like 2004 they did that, but the Supreme Court has largely been in favor of interpreting the Second Amendment in a very broad way that I think it probably wasn't initially intended to be as that broad. But yeah,
related to that, I think people and dare I say Supreme Court justices probably have a distorted view of the Second Amendment and what's in our Bill of Rights. If you read it verbatim, it doesn't say, you could just own a weapon and whatever you want. It actually says well-regulated militia are the words. So there's that. But then even if there was something like very like freedom of speech, for instance, it's like very clear in the First Amendment. Even that doesn't mean you could just say whatever you want. That's actually not how freedom of speech works. There's actually limits on freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So as I teach my students, like none of these civil liberties are absolute. So the fact that you have a Second Amendment does not block the path to try to create some sort of meaningful reforms when it comes to trying to get these guns away from bad people.
Yeah, but that all goes back to this ideal of everybody and and their personal liberties and don't tread on me and it's my right if I want a gun I should have a gun and that whole rugged individualism. It all works until all of a sudden it doesn't, and so now you have the farmers. They were all for Trump, and now Trump implements tariffs that are really wrecking havoc in a lot of their exports, and now they need government support. You want to shrink the federal government as much as possible. A storm comes through your town, and now you need FEMA, and there's so it's just there's kind of this everybody's an individual until all of a sudden something happens to them, and like guns are perfect, just that perfect example. It's just that like Kieran, if you got this insane amount of weaponry out there in amongst the population, there's going to be bad things happening.
It's just on a very hard train of logic to follow that if you make powerful weapons extremely accessible, more people will use them. Yeah. I think it's very basic. But people will find very convoluted, twisted ways to somehow argue that guns make, if you were to survey Americans, there are a lot of Americans who believe that guns make us safer. That they reduce gun violence, which really doesn't make any sense, but it's a very widespread view.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you don't need to go in and take away all guns, but maybe have more background checks, more mandatory waiting periods, maybe reduce like private transactions of guns, which I make those illegal, so you can't have some guy selling it to his friend who's actually been guilty of domestic violence in the past or something. These private sales, and
people will always they will cherry pick some case and say, "Oh, look, like this shooter actually did pass a background check, so that means." Background checks are 100% ineffective. Yeah. So they'll kind of generalize from some case. But, people break the law all the time. Does that mean that we should just get rid of laws? Like, that's kind of the logic. I mean, you put laws in place to try to keep people in line. No law is going to fully deter violence or, people from breaking the law, but you at least keep most people and keep most of the order. That's...
Okay.
I think I'm with Kieran. I think this is pretty common sense.
It's about friction. You create friction. You make it harder for people to do something. You're not going to eliminate 100%, but you don't eliminate drugs 100% because you legislate against hard drugs. Right. But you can reduce it by creating some friction, in the case of guns, and making it a little bit harder to get them. And then maybe they won't do it. Maybe they won't be able to get the weapon to be able to do it. Like you put more obstacles in the way, they're less likely to do it. It's like you don't lock your door because it's 100% foolproof that you can never break in. You lock in because it's a deterrent.
Yeah, yeah. Take this forward, say 3 months from now. This event will be kind of forgotten. Will it be like an accelerant to something else? Or something, or just something completely different. What are your thoughts?
It's hard to say any specifics.
Yeah.
I'd say very broadly speaking, it's probably just going to make the political environment more toxic. I don't see how it makes anything better. It's going to, if there is some kind of violence against the left by the right now, by some right wing, activist lunatic who,
like a payback.
Yeah, if that happens, it'll be justified people on the right because of this happened, and we'll find out at some point when they capture the shooter, assuming they do, what their motivation was, but. They probably was politically motivated, and assuming that is the case, then any other future violence against people on the left will be partly justified by people on the right because of this happening. It opens a door for many bad things.
Yeah.
It's not the first time something like this has happened, but it does open the door for more bad things going forward.
Yeah.
Give it 1 week, and there'll be something else in the news. This will be
it's a pretty short news cycle, and so there'll be some new outrage. They'll find another drawing in the Epstein book or something.
Yes. Who knows?
One thing, just kind of like these externalities, if you put it together, one thing that Trump has done as part of his retribution is remove security details for a whole bunch of people. And now if you go into even a hotter environment, could something possibly, happen there? That's, I don't want to predict that it will, but those are the kind of things that all of a sudden now if you think that this might make the political environment less secure, and now what you're doing is actually, just opening up all your political foes to be more vulnerable. I don't know. It's just that's just some food for thought.
He did that with Harris. He did it with John Bolton, taking away their security.
He's done it for a whole variety.
Yeah, a lot of it knows people. Was it the FBI and CIA? He did that too.
Yeah, and I think even. I don't know if he did it for the vice president with Pence.
I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah. But
I actually did not know the vice president only had security for, was it 6 months after they leave office? I didn't realize it was that short. So the president has it for life now. I didn't know it used to be that way, but since I think Obama signed a bill, it's actually for life for presidents.
Right.
So it seems like a big gap to have it for life for presidents, but only for 6 months for vice presidents. So that would not be a bad idea maybe to extend that a little bit to at least a few years, a little bit further outside the political environment.
Do you think there's much grace coming out of the White House these days?
It's not going to happen, but
okay,
it should
Not under
happen.
this administration, probably.
It should happen.
I didn't know that was such a recent thing. I just figured that had been around. That's crazy.
Up until I think it was early in Obama's presidency, presidents only got security detail for, I want to say it was either 10 or 15 years after the presidency, then they lost it.
Okay.
So like
still
at that
quite
point,
a bit, but yeah.
So at that point you'd have, it was for a while, but you'd still have ex-presidents who had no security or had to pay for it themselves.
Yeah.
That's how it used to be, right?
Yeah.
It used to be before Lincoln. It was you had to pay for private security as a president.
There was no official service to protect the president before Lincoln. That's more of a modern invention.
Well, dramatic change of subject. Okay, let's go on to something that's maybe a little more cheerful. Government shutdown.
Ooh.
Oh, with the recess that Congress had, now they're back. Today's September 10th, and 20 days from now, September 30th is technically the shutdown date, and the level of brinksmanship and everything else that goes into all these discussions. What's the chances that that there will be a shutdown?
I think Democrats are going to feel a lot of pressure to do something because I think most Democrats wanted to shut the government down back in, was that April or something, or in the spring. And Schumer and a number of senators who are Democrats ended up, you could say, compromising more or less with Republicans and agreeing to fund the government for another 6 months. But that was met with a lot of backlash, a lot of outrage by the Democratic base. So I think they're going to feel a lot of pressure to be more firm this time around.
Right.
Whether or not they will, I'm not sure. I think if you go back 6 months, Schumer's thought was Trump was being stopped in the courts, that this was when Doge was doing its thing, that Trump might just try to take more power if Congress didn't play ball, more or less. But I don't know if those arguments really hold up now, where the courts have been more favorable to Trump, and Trump has continued to seize power regardless of Democrats playing ball in Congress by funding the government. So I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Schumer, because it's really going to be the House Republicans of the House should be able to fund the government on their own probably, but in the Senate they'll need Democrats, and that is where Schumer is going to be under a lot of pressure by the Democratic base to not compromise and to try to get some kind of concession out of the administration in exchange for funding the government.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what the number would be. I actually kind of think it's a very high likelihood, though.
Yeah.
I mean, what other powers the Democrats have?
Yeah.
I mean, the president's been willing to, sign these executive orders and do things that are borderline or just outright unconstitutional. I think the Democrats would be justified to kind of put their foot down, and usually it's the majority party that takes the blame for this stuff anyway. So that even just adds further incentive to do this.
Yeah, they've been so emasculated that they, it's almost that this is about one of the few things they can do in defiance, because you can't stop confirmations. They obviously can't stop the increase of the unitary executive. They run rampant, and cut programs and what have you. And it seems like they're going to go and do this out of defiance. Sad thing is, I think it'll be like Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner, and and he goes over that cliff and realizes his feet are going, and it's they won't accomplish anything. They'll get blamed for it, and so it'll be a complete and total disaster. That's that's kind of, what are your thoughts? I think that they're going to go and do this, and it'll blow up in their faces.
I don't know. It is true. If you look at the past, most times the government shut down, the party in power is blamed because people recognize them as having control. So I'm not sure. It is really the only power the Democrats have at this point. They have no power in the House. The Senate, they have some power because you need 60 votes to pass things. Obviously, they don't control the executive branch. The Supreme Court's very conservative. So if they're going to do anything, this is like their one. You need Congress to fund the government, and this is like the one way they can do something.
Yeah.
So I would guess it's probably worth the risk for Democrats, just based on the past of the party in power being punished for it politically. But also in this environment, being punished politically might mean like Trump's approval rating dropping 2 or 3%. So it might not be that much of a punishment.
Yeah.
I think presidents end up taking the blame for, whether it's justified or not. I mean, first off, if you're a Trump supporter, you're going to blame the Democrats no matter what. Right. If you're a Democrat, you're going to blame the Republicans no matter what. So it's really about those independent voters and how they would be swayed by something like government shutdown. I don't think the average independent American voter is sophisticated enough to understand the intricacies of how bills are passed in two chambers of Congress. Right. I think the way the American voter operates is, how am I doing in my life? Oh, if there's a government shutdown, maybe I'm not getting my Social Security check or whatever.
Right.
Who's president? That's who gets the blame.
Yeah.
This is kind of what hurt Biden, right? Was like inflation turned into Biden-inflation.
Yeah.
Even though I would argue Biden didn't really have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the problems with our political environment is set up right now, or it's sort of structured and developed, is that the most informed voters tend to be extremely partisan, and then the people who are more swingy, the moderates, if you want to call them that, by and large, are not very informed. Like if you just kind of survey people who say they don't identify with their party or they're not they're considered a moderate, by and large, they are much less knowledgeable about how the government works than people who are really partisan and very invested in politics.
Yeah. Well, I know. Jason a little later. He had, Brendan. He had some predictions he wanted to kind of play back and. I'll just go on record. Yeah, that the government will shut down. The Democrats will be somehow blamed for the whole mess, and then they'll come, be in some sad way having to acquiesce, and Trump will just continue, marching along. So that's I can't see it. Now, the only one thing why we want to keep the government up is that we got Representative Rick Crawford on the schedule for October 2nd, to come here to the school. And and his chief of staff said that, if it's a government shutdown, I guess he can't make it. I didn't want to write back that, isn't he unemployed at that point? He have all this time. but I don't think he wanted to.
Can we get him on the podcast? Is that possible?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, you got a whole your schedule cleared, Representative Crawford. Come on, jump on in. Drive on over. He's only in Jonesboro. Yeah, come see us. Away. Yeah. All right, Jason. Now you were talking about just things as far as some predictions.
We want to do the predictions now.
Yeah, we're going to do a short. This is a little somber. I don't want to get, it's like, when you have somebody that's just shot dead, just hours ago, I think that's, this would be a good time to kind of wrap things up.
Okay. Well, some of the predictions aren't that somber, so.
Right.
But the one prediction, Shulga had a prediction that, we talked about on the podcast last week that I think would be good, maybe to just get everybody's opinion on. And that was recession.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be do we think that a recession is nearing us as of 2025, September 10th?
Yep.
Kind of wanted that opinion. Shulga was saying that it's very likely, very possible from an economic standpoint. But what do you guys think from a political standpoint?
To be fair, I talked to Shulga about this. My answer was I don't think a recession will next 2 years. That's what we're going with.
2 years.
Yeah, I would say I'm gonna say no. I just think that whenever I read something like the doomsayers in the news about the economy, it's usually someone that just doesn't like Trump to begin with.
Right.
So we'll see how much like the tariff stuff end up affecting the economy, because I know that's part of the argument is that the tariffs will kind of send the economy into some sort of spiraling, downward. But for the time being, I think the U.S. economy looks resilient enough.
I don't have much of as an economics background, but I would say maybe a 1 in 3 chance. I think the tariffs probably slow the economy, but I don't think it will go on into a recession.
A recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. That's technical terms for recession. The things that we're seeing is that employment is the number is going to, I believe, will continue to go down. Deportations is one, manufacturing is soft. That's another, and so then you have all that. It's going to suppress. Another thing that's going to be a major hit in employment is so much investment right now is in AI. And, the reason all this investment is in AI is that its promise is to do one of 2 things, either dramatically grow an organization's revenue or dramatically help it decrease cost. Chances are much more likely that it's going to be a massive cost savings to a lot of organizations. In what way? All these entry-level positions will go away. junior analysts, anything that you can further automate is going to be automated. And when you look at the total workforce and you start looking at kind of the range of potential job loss, you're looking at it being in the millions, 2 million, 5 million, big numbers. And what happens there is now you have 2 to 5 million people that aren't working. What do? They pull back on spending. And now, all of a sudden now the consumer spending, which is what is the biggest driver of our economy, is pulled back. And so I think that there is a likelihood that you're going to start to see all this come into play, and that a recession could be very likely. But the only thing is, with things softening the way they are, chances are the interest rates are going to cut the interest rates, and it'll be begrudgingly, because I know Jerome Powell, the last thing he wants is to be seen that Trump, kind of bullied him into doing this. But from an economist point of view, an interest rate cut, given all the indicators he's looking at, is highly likely. So, we dodged the recession, back, in COVID and everything, and amazingly, that was Powell that did that. He did a brilliant job, kind of managing the U.S. through that. And now here he is again, and I just think that the impending job cuts, deportation, this whole talk about tariffs bringing manufacturing back. Yeah, that 10 years from now, maybe, but right now, all it is just a tax, and it's going to just drive inflation, lower demand. I just am not seeing anything that's leading to any kind of robust growth, and so could you have like a slight decrease in GDP for 2 consecutive quarters? I think so.
And with AI, I was reading the other day that there's so much money in AI being invested in the economy. If you took out AI, we would be in a recession.
Yeah.
That's how big it is right now. It's interesting thing too about like the loss of entry level jobs, because it just sounds like AI is probably going to advance very quickly in the next couple of years, and if that's the case, I think the question is how quickly will companies implement the AI to replace workers, because there will be a lot of pushback from that. That's not going to be received positively. And so even if the technology is there, how quickly can you implement it, or will they implement it into their everyday business activities? I was on the phone yesterday, and I think I was talking to an AI agent. I'm not positive, but I think I was.
Yeah.
Because there were some things that made me think it was not a real person. But it was my first moment where I was like, well, am I talking to a person? I don't think I am, but I'm not 100% sure about this.
Yeah.
I had that happen to me too a couple weeks ago. I had like an AI. I think it was an AI person, because the way they talk, it's like, when you can tell when somebody's reading a script, and then you can tell when like it's just like sounds a little too fake, but like the voice is so real that you're like, I don't even know like what this is anymore,
Yeah, it was just like they didn't get the nuance of what I was saying, and they were a little stilted in how they were speaking, which is why I think it was an AI agent, but I'm not positive on that. I could have been talking to a person, but I'm probably like an 85% chance it wasn't a person. But anyway, like I think AI will be a really big political issue by the 2028 election, because by that point we'll see probably a good amount of jobs being lost, and unemployment, right? Maybe a rise in unemployment, as you said, possibly, and then that will lead to political infighting about how to address the situation. If you do address it, do you tax companies for replacing workers with AI? Are there going to be protests against?
Oh yeah,
against
it's like 2016. Trump successfully one of his really brilliant political moves was about bringing manufacturing back. The coal miners, all the shutdown plants, and all these Rust Belt areas that he's going to bring all that back, and now it's just you're going to see, I think, a similar thing where you're going to have this job decimation, and it's going to come from the white collar, workforce.
Yeah, I think the difference there is like with the loss of the manufacturing jobs, it was a gradual process.
Yeah.
It took the place over the course of decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
I think manufacturing peaked in 1950, somewhere around there, and then it declined the following decades. With the AI revolution, it could be like a matter of like 5 or 10 years,
Yeah.
and everything changes. It'll be much faster, much harder to adjust to. And if at some point, if it's doing all like intellectual labor for us, or most intellectual labor for us, like what are people going to do? And that's a whole other really big conversation.
And that's the other thing about like I think Shoga was kind of talking about that with younger workers is it's also going to be like, what's the point of going to school anymore too? Like it's going to dissuade a lot of people from going to school, because if all these white collar jobs that were paying decent, for entry level that require college degrees are now being replaced by AI, it's going to make a lot of people just want to go into, jobs, or maybe just not want to go to school. And then if you have high unemployment for young people, how do you get them to go back into work if we do get manufacturing jobs? Are people who have degrees, and you say, oh, well, now you have to go get a manufacturing job or something like that, even though they're skilled in whatever they went to school for. I mean, how do you persuade those people to just give up what the thousands of dollars they not wasted, but essentially wasted in college to go work a manufacturing job? It's kind of disheartening.
That's a powder keg too. If you have just this whole group of young people that just their prospects just get dimmer every time. I mean, look at Nepal right now. As far as that's a young person's revolt, isn't it? You guys read up on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it started with the censorship of
social media.
Things like Facebook and Instagram, on top of corruption scandals. Yeah,
but it's just like all of a sudden they rise up, and that's. I mean, Gen Z's getting screwed enough already, and now you start throwing even further.
Yeah.
Any kind of career trajectory. Yeah.
Because that was kind of the scary thing about like going into like a writing path too. Like for me with English, like I want to be a writer, but like, I spent all this money in college, and then like all of a sudden it's just like, well, now we're just going to kind of, have a few guys who do it with AI. And it's like, well, now these people who are writing assistants or people who are working with writers, they're never going to be able to get into that position because, their jobs are basically gone. So now you have all this debt that you're going to have to eventually pay off, very soon. And so people who are on like this latter end, like me, where like AI is just now coming about, where it's taking these jobs, who didn't get the choice to not go to college because they thought they had this opportunity to have a job, those people are going to be really upset.
Yeah.
I can see it making a difference with number of students choosing to go to college, because, it's not maybe explicit, but students go to college because they want to get a nice white collar job, generally speaking. There's some exceptions, but that's generally what people go to college for. And if AI eats up all the white collar jobs, that's not going to be as much of an option anymore. But even manufacturing jobs, or like the more blue collar jobs, I was reading like Amazon's warehouses are all going to be it's going to be like nobody working there anymore. It's all going to be AI. So even those jobs aren't really safe either. It's just everything's going to be affected.
All automated. The Ford plant I worked at during summers when going to undergrad, my brother ended up there, years later, and it was a Sunday, and they had production off for the day, so I got a chance to go and take a tour. And literally every job I had there was a robot now, and they were terrible jobs. Oh my goodness, I had something that would have to go into a spot welder, and I'd have all these little sparks, burning holes into my overalls. Oh yeah, I had, the paint shed. My nose hairs would always come back different colors every night. It's good times.
It all seems like a catch-22 as well, because it's like, all right, we're going to reduce costs by replacing lots of workers with AI, and then nobody's going to have jobs, so who's going to buy the product? It's just like something doesn't work there if it just
but you do it. Everybody's only thinking of their own situation. It's like, okay, I have a company. I can lower the workforce by 10%, and then that 10% I could either reinvest, in additional capital, or what the common playbook now is just do a stock buyback. And then what's the stock buyback do? Well, it makes all the current shareholders richer. And who are the people that personally benefit from that? The senior executives at that company. Now, all of a sudden, their options start to increase in value. And so, I mean, they're perfectly fine, doing this, on their own, but now you get like every company across the landscape doing that, and you got a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Sounds like a time for a UBI, universal base income.
Well, it's bigger than that. So like, even if you had a world where, okay, like let's say like most of the jobs, close to all the jobs, are just robots. All right, let's say we could create like some sort of Bernie Sanders utopian world where we can say universal based income, or I like the idea. I think the work week should be shortened. But okay, let's say like no one has to work and everyone's just collecting a check and they can support themselves, and maybe we use that to buy the products that's being made by robots. Even in that world, so if you think about it, like most people, probably including myself, our identity and our life is so attached to our profession.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take away one's profession and we're not working anymore, on the surface, it seems cool. Like, oh, no work. Like, I love being on summer vacation, but I don't know if we want to live in that world where you don't have, you're just floating around. And then it's like, what is going to fill that vacuum now? I don't know the answer. And that's the scary part is like, what does that world look like? Has there been a movie on this? They should make a sci-fi movie.
Okay, there is a good game on this, though. Detroit Become Human, but that's not AI. That's like robots, like actual androids taking the jobs. But then the androids become sentient and take over. So then it's like, scary.
No,
but
probably fill the void with video games and porn. That would be my guess.
And that might be one of the, I mean, you hope though people don't just start fighting each other and just like.
Well, I was going to say, if you have all this time, now you have unlimited time to be on Twitter.
Yeah. I think it would lead to a lot of, I think it would lead to a rising crime. Like people don't have things to do.
Yeah. That's what I think too.
Loitering, they're idle. They're going to lead to rising crime.
Yeah.
So there's dignity at work with work. People identify with their job. The economic system, that would be really hard to figure out because there's never been, as far as I know, any large economic system that subsists off of people not doing anything and having the government pay everybody to get by.
Farm subsidies.
Yes, they make some money though, don't they? They're still doing work. We wouldn't be doing anything in this world. So that'd be really hard to figure out. And even if you do, like people are gonna, what is your identity gonna be? And
especially if you don't have any hobbies.
Yeah. And for people like, I don't know, like me, somebody who went to grad school and spent 11 years in college to study something really specific, a big part of my identity is caught up in that very narrow thing, and that's true for not everybody, but for a lot of people, and that's a hard thing to give up.
Yeah. Well, you never know that because. Was Andrew Yang? Was it?
He was the one that wanted. I don't know if Bernie was on the UBI, but Andrew Yang was on that. But Shulga, originally, I remember Shulga talked about this in a class one time where he said that we should get UBI on top of working, and just increase tax for bigger businesses. Yeah. Because from an economic standpoint, it apparently worked. But I mean, at the same time, I guess I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, so I don't know. Yeah. But I just see
good luck passing that in Congress nowadays.
I was going to say
getting nowhere.
That would be the issue. I mean, from a utopian economic standpoint where everybody's like, oh, everybody needs to have money. Yeah. But even in a reality, the other thing that I think would be scary because about the crime aspect of it, okay, so you get an allotted amount of money, right? That's what a UBI is. So each, let's say, month, you get this X amount of money. What's to stop somebody from just blowing all that money, having no money, and then just going, well, what do I do now? So just start turning to crime, or you start killing people, or you start stealing things,
donating organs.
Yeah.
It's be a very weird world.
Well, before this thing gets really off track, I think it's about time we start wrapping it up. You have anything else?
Yeah, we
Jason?
do have one more. Yeah. We have one more thing for that guy right there.
That guy
sitting across from me.
Yeah.
So we. On the last episode, everybody, wanted your prediction on betting.
Prediction: Jets clobber the Steelers week 1.
There you go.
Week
you think
1.
So?
Yeah.
It's Lions. Period. That's. Yeah, you heard it here. Bet the farm. Just to take your kids' tuition
What is
money.
Pat's over under on
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just take your kids' tuition money, bet on the Lions. That's all you need to know.
Because, Shoga said this is now a betting podcast.
Okay.
Because we're making all these predictions and bets. So you bet on the Jets versus Steelers game.
That was close.
Do you remember what you said?
Did I say bet the house?
Well, you said bet the house, but you said on the Jets,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I did say the Jets were going to win, yes.
And the Jets did lose.
They lost.
So now it's time to redeem yourself. You got a football prediction that people should predict on and listen to the wise words of Coach Connell.
Sure, I'm on a losing streak right now, but let's get back in the win
But
column.
you also won the Trump prediction a year ago, so that gave you which
counts. Let's be honest, counts more.
Yeah,
it counts for everything.
Yeah, so you can never be wrong now.
Yeah, well, pick a game and I'll give you my prediction.
Okay, let's do this one. We'll do, since tomorrow is the Commanders versus his Packers.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you bet the house on that?
Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.
Packers gonna win.
Packers are 3-point favorites or something, 3.5, I think.
Bet the money line just in case, but yeah, Packers.
All right. Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
I think I just jinxed your team.
Podcast.
We'll find out.
Yeah, I think our audience is just going to continue to grow now. Now that we will be sponsored by FanDuel.
I know, right? Prize Picks.
Prize Picks.
Prize Picks.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you all for listening, watching the Career Pathways podcast. Normally we have a little more like laughs and kind of get to kind of enjoy each other's company. And this one was kind of tough because even if you don't necessarily agree with a person's political point of view, somebody just dying for absolutely no reason is just wrong. And I think we had a good conversation as far as guns being part of this. And so hopefully someday, somewhere, that thoughts and prayers won't be enough and that there can be something that can really change and not have something like what happened today be such a common occurrence. So that's kind of my final take. Anything from you, Kieran?
I don't think I have anything else to add.
I think the Podfather said it best, so I think that's a good place to go off.
Okay, how about you, Jason Che Guevara?
Che Guevara, no.
Oh, you're out there, universal income, and just hand money to everybody.
Whoa, hold on now.
I'm offended.
I plead the fifth on that. Okay, I was bringing up, don't shoot the messenger here, as they say, right? I was just bringing the information to you guys.
Okay.
Not necessarily that I agree with a universal basic income, although just having free money would be kind of cool.
Okay.
Who wouldn't want free money, right?
Well, what better way to end?
Some
free
COVID
money,
stipend checks.
Free money for everybody. Okay, power to the people. All right, so thank you. I hope you come back. We do this every other week, so we just hope you listen and continue watching us. And by the way, Jason, where can they find the As the World Turns or Burns podcast?
We don't do that on this one.
Yes, we do now.
So you can find the, oh my gosh, I almost say Career Pathways. You can find As the World Turns or Burns on, I have to make up a different number because we're not on the same amount of platforms, I'm pretty sure. But we'll just say 99.97% of platforms, the same number of germs that get killed with Germ-X.
Basically everywhere. We're global.
We're global. We're around the earth.
Around the world. So thank you again, and we'll catch up with you next time. Take care.
This podcast is sponsored in part by Lyon College and Kilt Studios. Thank you to Jonah Winter for the intro and outro music.
Prediction: Jets clobber the Steelers. Week 1.
There you go.
Week
You think
1.
so?
And I can't say enough about Boz. And our kicker is a serial killer.